Hey, Pat, it's Kristen. I'm just checking my audio. Can you hear me okay?
I'm not Pat, but yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Powell.
You guys need to mute your microphones. Expecting like 30 people, right? Like a human smuggling. Sorry, I read the bottom text. I thought about calling you, but I was like, well, no, this is like more of a bus issue. I'm sure Jesus knows.
Morning, Pat. Rolling here.
Good morning. We'll get started in just a minute.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to thank you for the cashew nuts.
That's our secret. That's our secret.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning, Kevin.
Hey, Pat, did we start it off or should we wait a bit longer?
I'm just doing a quick check to see if I have at least 9 members on the phone. So if you can give me just 1 second, I'll be right back with you.
That worked.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I will do a quick roll call, and then Councilmember Heredia will call the meeting to order. City of Avondale, Vice Mayor Pat Dennis. City of Buckeye, Councilmember Clay Goodman. City of Chandler, Mayor Hartke.
Present.
City of El Mirage, Mayor Alexis Hermosillo. Town of Fountain Hills, Councilmember Mike Sharnow.
Present.
Town of Gilbert, Councilmember Jared Taylor. City of Glendale, Councilmember Lauren Tomachoff. City of Goodyear, Vice Mayor Bill Stipp.
Present.
Maricopa County Supervisor Jack Sellers.
Present.
City of Mesa, Councilmember Francisco Heredia.
Here.
City of Peoria, Councilmember John Edwards. City of Phoenix, Mayor Kay Gallego.
Present.
Town of Queen Creek, Mayor Gail Barney. Every time. City of Scottsdale, Councilmember Suzanne Clapp.
Here.
City of Surprise, Councilmember Roland Winters.
Here.
City of Tempe, Councilmember Robin Arredondo Savage.
Here.
City of Tolleson, Councilmember Linda Laborian. Town of Wickenburg, Mayor Rui Pereira. He's present. And Town of Youngtown, Mayor Michael LaVault.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
And City of Glendale, Councilmember Lauren Tomachoff. I understand that you're on the, okay, great.
I'm here now.
Great. Okay, and I have Councilmember Jared Taylor also on the list as attending. Councilmember Heredia, we are ready to begin.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. This is Councilmember Francisco Heredia of City of Mesa, taking over for chair duties today. Councilmember Edwards going to make it, but want to convene the meeting and welcome members to the September meeting. We stand up and recite the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And with that, Pat just did the roll call. So if a committee member would like to ask a question or make a comment during the meeting, please type your comment in the box and it will be read aloud and answered. All meeting attendees, please mute your computer, microphone, or phone so that we don't distract the presentations or the conversations going on. So just a quick house things in order here. So first item on the agenda is public comment for today's meeting. Public comment is being taken in written format and be entered into the official minutes of the meeting. With that, item number 2, Chief Executive Officer's report. So I call on to Mr. Scott Smith for this report. Scott.
Thank you, council member and chair, members of the boards. And by the way, one other thing, if you have a comment, you don't have to type the entire question in. You just let Pat know through the chat box that you'd like to weigh in, or else just weigh in. Any of those three, you have options. Either send Pat the question or let her know you need to ask a question, or just ask the question. But thank you very much. We appreciate everyone once again joining us via WebEx. I hate to say this, I think we've gotten way too proficient in these meetings, and I wish that would end, and as I know all of you do too. We have just a couple things to go over, most of them related to our rail program. Go ahead, next slide. The first thing is, since the last time we met, is that our Northwest Extension, and this is a area which you may or may not have seen as to what that will look like as it passes from east to west over the I-17 into the Metro Center site. the elevated station and the transit center parking garage there. We received a notification from the Federal Transit Administration that we had received that they had set aside a $50.6 million allocation for this project. That means that there's a budget set aside. We still do not have a full funding grant agreement. We're working toward that, but that was very, very good news and shows the commitment of the FTA to this project going forward. We have actually begun construction with some utility relocation this month, as a matter of fact. So things are moving quite ahead. The second thing is that if you've driven through downtown Phoenix, although most of you haven't been there because of the COVID, you'll notice, and these are an aerial picture of the intersection of First Avenue and Washington at the top, Jefferson at the bottom. You can see the construction barricades. We are moving forward with the construction. We also received notification from the FTA that they had approved what we call, or what they call, a letter of no prejudice. What that means is that they have approved us to proceed with all construction activities related to this project, and that they would be eligible for federal reimbursement. This is a major, major milestone because it allows us to move ahead unfettered in our construction activities. We have, as you can see here, this is right in front of Phoenix City Hall, moved forward aggressively during the COVID with our utility relocation. And next slide, please. We've also begun construction actually down on the down in the south of the river, on the south central part of the South Central Extension downtown hub, and we're very pleased that so far we are moving ahead with as minimal of a disruption as we can have. One of the things that's interesting, if you did notice, there was an article in the I don't think it's hit the print edition, but the AZ Central, a very good article about some of the things we've done I want to make you aware of. And the gist of the article was basically that the businesses along light rail, which we've always set up to assist due to construction, have obviously been major impacted by the COVID and the lockdown. We have, since we are out in the field with literally daily with contacts to businesses through our community outreach staff, we have transitioned, and we have in many ways become a resource to these businesses also to deal with COVID related issues. We are not set up to handle COVID, but what we can do is we can facilitate businesses in contacting or making contact with grant programs, legal assistance, other things that other agencies, including the city of Phoenix, the state, and the federal government are offering. We've teamed up with Maricopa County Bar Association to direct business owners to legal help to navigate the myriad of COVID-related assistance, such as PPP and other things. We found that this has been a very rewarding and beneficial service we've been able to provide, and it just seemed natural because we are out there in the community, as I've said, talking to people every day. And I'll give kudos to our community outreach staff for expanding their reach and their assistance to be truly part of the community. This construction activity will continue on. Now that we have the LOMP, there are no FTA restrictions. We're hoping to move forward with our grant agreement. As you know, that's a well over $500 million grant agreement sometime in the first quarter of next year. So we're getting very close to formalizing that process. Finally, on October 20th, I'd like to invite all of you to join us for our annual, our 33rd annual Clean Air Campaign Awards. Registration is now open. Will be a virtual clean air campaign. As those of you who have attended in the past, it's usually quite a festive affair held in a big hotel ballroom. Well, we're going virtual this year. The new format will be memorable. We'll still have C. McLaughlin, who has hosted our event for many years, and an inspiring keynote from and humorous from Adam Lee Brooks. There is no charge to participate in this online event. Please sign up. Many of your staff and the cities are not applicants, but they're up for awards. They're finalists. So many in your staff are doing an incredible job with their commute solutions and their alternative cars, their biking, their clean air, anything clean air. And so you are invited to join this. Finally, this is our schedule. I almost wanted to say our horario schedule for the next month in October. We will be having a board study session October 22nd, where we will be discussing not only a COVID, but what we would call our formal ways we're dealing with it, some information we've gathered, and some updates as to how we see us gradually moving back into a normalcy whenever that should happen. We are preparing and planning for that. So there will be a presentation and discussion on that as to the beginning of our formal discussions on what does transit, what does Valley Metro look like as we move out of COVID into a regular world. And we'll talk to you about what we're doing to make that transition. Mr. Chair, that is my report.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott. Any questions or comments there from anybody? All right, hearing none. Why don't we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is COVID-19 update. Calling Scott Smith again on that end. A lot of work has been done on precautions and items due to the pandemic. So thanks to Valley Metro staff and your staff there for that piece.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we don't have a specific report. There have been no substantial changes since last time, but I will, just to follow up on what I said, we have started the process of some formal planning, and we'll get into a lot more detail in the October study session. So unless there's questions about specifics that we've done, and that will include, one of the things we've been talking about lately is we have had service changes that have been temporary due to COVID. Those temporary changes are now going on several months, but we still consider those because of the continued shutdown or semi-lockdown and the fact that workers have not returned to their normal place of work. We consider the changes in our services levels to be temporary as COVID related, and we will continue along those lines until we see some sort of normalization. But I'll just defer until October when we can get into some deep questions. If you have some more specific issues, please feel free to contact me or Alexis or Jim Hilliard, who's basically leading our COVID effort, and would be more than happy to discuss it with you.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott. If no one has any questions, does anybody have questions on this? We'll probably wait until the October more details on what's happening there. Next item on the agenda, minutes. The minutes from the August 27th, 2020 joint board meeting are presented for approval. Request a motion and a second to approve the August 27, 2020 joint TMC RMC meeting minutes. Any takers there? Perfect. Second. All right. Why don't we do this? Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Item number 5, Audit and Finance Subcommittee update. I'll pass it over to Councilmember Arredondo Savage to provide this update.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Heredia. Just a couple of things from the Audit and Finance Subcommittee update. As you all know, we have been working very diligently on the AFS charter and the internal audit charter. And we have finally finalized those documents. And I just want everybody to know that there was a lot of work, a really big deep dive into these documents by the Audit and Finance Subcommittee. And I want to thank the committee for really doing their due diligence to make sure that we get these documents right, making sure that's not only good for us as the committee now, but for those that come after us. They worked really hard on those, and that's our next agenda item. So I'm excited to be able to bring those up. Of course, one of the biggest items that we're talking about in AFS is budget, kind of what's happening with their budget and the impacts to COVID and how that looks. So we had the opportunity to talk about Prop 400 and the ADOT revenue forecast and some of the concerns and maybe some of the different scenarios moving forward. Also, we will be talking about in the future, basically how we're spending our CARES money and get an update on that, making sure that we're confirming our peer agency list and just reviewing our budget versus our actual spendings and revenues. And let's see what else we got here. Another thing we talked about was fare enforcement, making sure that we are maximizing our fare box recovery in the months and the years to come. And let me see. Oh, and we will be, as I mentioned, we talked about the ADOT forecast. We were looking at the ADOT forecast, but that is actually from 2019. So we will be doing a review very soon here, as we expect to see that hopefully in October. So that is definitely going to be on our radar. So I guess that would be it. Council member, if you want, I can go ahead and roll into the next agenda item for you.
Yeah, let's move on to item 5A, Audit and Finance Subcommittee Charter. As the Councilwoman Arredondo Savage mentioned, so why don't you provide this update?
Yeah, just really quick for the item. I want to say thank you to the Audit and Finance Subcommittee work, their due diligence. They really did an awesome job. I mean, we've been working on this for months, so I want to take a minute to say thank you for that. And that doesn't really happen without everybody taking the time to do it and without Alexis. So Alexis was the main driver. She was very responsive and listened to all of our suggestions and was patient with our edits. And as you know, the Audit and Finance Subcommittee, they are just a really great group of caring individuals that worked hard to get these documents right. So I don't want to take all of her thunder. I told her with all the time and energy that Alexis spent to get these documents to us, she should have an opportunity to say whatever she likes in regards to this particular document. So Alexis, I just again want to say thank you to the Audit and Finance Subcommittee, all those members, and to you, Alexis, for your work to help us get this going and get a really great, solid document. Thank you, Councilmember.
Mr. Chair, Madam AFS Chair, it was a short 7-month process. I am glad to have gone through it with you all. I've learned a lot. And what you have before you is the Audit and Finance Subcommittee Charter. When the Audit and Finance Committee adopts their own internal audit charter that helps guide them with their oversight of audit functions of Valley Metro, it is strongly recommended that the subcommittee also adopt a charter that guides the subcommittee's work, roles and responsibilities, and that's what is before you today. What it really does, it delineates further roles, responsibility, and authority with regard to the internal audit function at Valley Metro. And because the Audit and Finance Subcommittee is a subcommittee of the boards, any further delineation of roles, responsibilities, and such does fall on the full boards for approval. So that's what you have for today. You will also notice in your packet, you do have the internal audit charter that the AFS adopts. So that is included in your packet, but what is before you today is approval, and we are suggesting approval of the Audit and Finance Subcommittee Charter. Thank you, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
Perfect. Thank you, Alexis. Anybody have any questions, comments? Hearing none. You got saved, Alexis. With no more questions here, I think I echo the Councilwoman's comments as far as the work that went into this, and I agree the work from the Audit and Finance and staff was great. So with that, I request a motion and a second to approve.
So moved.
Perfect. Second. Do this. Anyone oppose? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, everybody. And with that, we move on to item 6 on the agenda, ERP consultant, Plant Moran contract change order. I'll pass it over to Scott Smith.
Thank you, Councilmember, and I will turn it over to Paul Hodgins, who is leading our ERP. And just a brief introduction, our ERP is our Enterprise Resource, can't remember what P stands for, the world of acronyms. But basically, this is the system that we are implementing that will pull all of our management processes, computer programs, information into a manageable way. I know many of your cities have gone through this in recent years. We have a real need. We have a wide variety of systems that most of them don't talk to each other. And we find ourselves not having information available from everything as disparate as a normal, as payroll to maintenance work orders for both facilities and for equipment. All that will be pulled together through this ERP. So it is a major undertaking. Paul Hodgins is leading that effort for us, and I'll turn it over to him to explain what this specific item is. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Chair, members of the board, we are asking for a change order to our contract with Plant Moran in the amount of $644,850. They have been our consultant on the Enterprise Resource Planning and Enterprise Asset Management System project. The roughly $645,000 is a fairly significant increase to the contract. So I'd like to provide just a brief discussion of why we are moving in this direction. So they've been working with us for nearly 2 years. They were involved in looking at our needs assessment, developing the specifications for our request for proposals. They helped us do the evaluation. Initially, this 4th phase, the implementation phase, we were really looking at them to just do some oversight and helping us to manage risk. We'd always intended for our controller, Paula Novacek, to be the project director for as our internal staff, and to find a third-party contractor to be the full-time project manager, somebody to really get into the details of that. Unfortunately, we looked through resume after resume, couldn't really find a project manager that we thought had the experience that we were looking for. And then we lost our controller back in June, so we didn't have a project director anymore. And the project, the vendor that we selected with the Oracle ERP and the Trapeze EAM system is fully cloud-based. So it's a little different type of implementation than an on-premises solution. There's no hardware and software to install and configure. It's all cloud-based. There's no customization. It's really more on how you configure the system and then looking at what kind of data you really need to convert and pull into the new system. So given that it's fully cloud-based and that we no longer had a project director or project manager, we worked with Plant Moran to develop this project management office concept. So Plant Moran is bringing a project director and a full-time project manager and several subject matter experts to assist our staff with working through the configuration process. That should also help us to minimize the amount of backfill that we need for our staff as we move forward. So it's really rethinking how we manage the project, which is why it's such a large increase to the contract. So right now we have kicked off our implementation for the project. We are working through, first step right now, working through our chart of accounts to ensure that the chart that we develop can work well with the Oracle system and with the Trapeze system out at the OMC. So that's it in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this item.
Perfect. Any members have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, this is Vice Mayor Pat Dennis.
Go ahead.
I do have a question. With this new configuration of having Plant do the project management and director, what's the length of time of this contract? Is it going to be for a year in order to implement?
Councilmember Dennis, the contract with Plant Moran was a 5-year contract. It'll get us through the full implementation of this project. So right now we're looking at phasing the implementation. We have a July 1st of 2021 date that we're looking at implementing the financials, so our general ledger, accounts receivable, accounts payable, some of the, the core financial systems. January 1st of 2022, we're looking at our timekeeping and payroll, and some of the financial planning and budgeting aspects. And then the asset management system with Trapeze is scheduled for early 2022, perhaps as late as March. So really this is about a 18-ish month implementation from this point. And so Plant Moran, this change order would get us through that full implementation of the system through basically through fiscal 2022.
So I'm also assuming that they are assisting us to address those three areas. At what point is Valley Metro then going to be putting in? I'm assuming you're looking for someone that's going to be overseeing this after they have completed their implementation.
Yeah, we will have some internal staff to support the system, but it's cloud-based, so there's not a lot of, we don't have to manage the software and hardware internally. That's all done by Oracle and Trapeze. So that the support we would have internally is to manage user accounts, any data inputs, data conversions, any integrations that weren't part of the scope of work. So it's a little bit minimal because it's a cloud-based solution.
Okay, so we don't need an actual position after this has been implemented.
Correct. I don't believe we would need a full-time position to help support this.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve agenda item number 6 as presented.
Perfect. Second?
Can the person who seconded identify themselves, please?
Anyone second?
This is Vice Mayor Pat Dennis. I'll second that.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone opposed to this agenda item? All right. Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, staff, for the presentation. Want to move on to agenda item 7, the Broadway curve, transit impact and mitigation strategies and opportunities. So pass it again to Scott Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm assuming, or maybe you don't, everyone's not aware that starting probably in the next year or two, there will be probably the largest freeway construction project since we completed widening on I-10 and 60 and other areas, and that's the Broadway curve widening. This will have a huge impact on transportation flow, both the automobile traffic and transit in the Southeast Valley through the busiest freeway section in the state, I believe, and you'll hear about that. And so working with MAG, I just we have been looking at the impacts on transit and also the possibility of mitigating factors and efforts that we might have through transit. So working with MAG and the Valley Metro staff, we've come up with a sort of brainstorming. You'll hear this several times during the presentation, but I want to just set the stage so it can be reiterated that these plans are ideas for mitigation that will be project related. There will be no changes or redirection of existing resources to handle these the mitigating factors. They will be funded through either the project or some new source of revenue. I want to say you'll hear that many times, but we just want to make sure that you know that, because that's been a question that's come up. So I will now turn it over to Marty, and I can't remember who else is going to be presenting this, but we'll turn it over to Marty Zeke, I think, to start it. Marty?
Scott Jack Sellers.
Yes, Jack.
Just a quick comment before you get started with the presentation.
Okay.
Right now, I think this is scheduled to start perhaps July of next year.
It's about a $700 million project, and it will be the most disruptive project we've ever done. So anything we can do to help alleviate some of those problems is really going to be significant.
Well, thank you for your comment. And as you all know, Jack is being a member of or formerly a member of the State Board of Transportation, knows this project well, and now still a guru on transportation throughout the state. He's exactly right. And that's why we're starting now to try and look at things, and we hope that we can be able to provide some sort of mitigating. You know, one of the big things that'll come up that you'll hear about is the impact of the new teleworking model that we have been introduced to through the COVID experience. I'm sure that'll play a big role, but we'll turn it over to Kristen. Do you have it, or does Marty have the first one?
Mr. Smith, this is Kristen. I'll get started.
Okay, so Kristen Myers from MAG will start it out for us, and then she'll turn it over to, I believe, Marty Z. So Kristen, go ahead.
All right, Pat, next slide, please. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kristen Myers, and I'm with the Maricopa Association of Governments, and I serve as a liaison to the Broadway Curve project. I wanted to start the presentation just with some quick highlights that have already been noted, but that they do significantly relate to this project. This stretch of Interstate 10 is the busiest freeway in the state, with approximately 300,000 vehicles per day utilizing this important corridor. Currently, the project team is reviewing proposals from the shortlisted firms with the anticipation that a contract will be executed by the first of this year, starting this upcoming summer. We anticipate that construction will be complete by the winter of 2024. And due to the complex nature of this area and what will be required in construction, ADOT and the project team are finding ways to make travel reliability a thing during these 4 years of construction. Next slide, please. So I wanted to, Pat, next slide.
I'm waiting for the internet connection.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Next slide. So the slides are in your packet. So if you want to keep going, hopefully the internet connection will catch up. I apologize.
Okay. Oh, no problem. There's some important information once the slide comes up, but I wanted to let you know there are current contract provisions for closures within the area of the Broadway curve. I did want to mention it is a key point that ADOT did make sure that in the contract that all lanes are required to be open during the weekday, especially during the peak periods. This includes all general purpose lanes and the HOV lane that our express service utilizes and our commuters. There are nighttime closures allowed. However, they don't usually start until 8 p.m. and they have to have all traffic control up by 4 a.m. on weeknights. And if they do not meet this schedule, and let's say they can't get traffic control up till 4:15 a.m., for every 15 minutes, it's $200,000 fine to the contractor. So the contractor has an incentive to make sure that they have everything up and open by the time stated in the contract. There are weekend lane closures allowed starting at 10 p.m. on Friday night and go until 4 a.m. Monday morning. However, there are major restrictions with regards to holidays and also many, many special events that the contractor cannot do any closures. And then one other item to note is when I-10 is closed for certain work that has to occur with bridges and other items, I-10 cannot be closed in both directions. So if the westbound's closed, the eastbound has to stay open. So Pat, I'm hoping we'll get to the next slide.
So the next slide, I believe it's the peer review of traffic mitigation. Is that the slide that you're on?
That is correct. Thank you. So in support of identifying potential mitigation strategies, MEG staff conducted peer research to identify freeway projects throughout the U.S. that utilize mitigation strategies to help with construction impacts. Only 49 projects were found throughout the United States, and only 3 of those were taken forward as case studies because of their similarity to the Broadway curve. So once we went through that white paper, we did note some key items while conducting this peer research. The first and very important was that the projects that we found within the United States had transportation demand management with transit that focused really on the efforts of commuter-based travel options like express service and passenger rail. Also, the construction mitigation efforts in the projects studied were most successful when implemented with flexible solutions. And finally, the Broadway curve as we know it is going to need to have a comprehensive, holistic, coordinated effort to identify these mitigation strategies and look at all available tools that we have in our toolbox. And with that, I'm going to send the presentation over to Marty to get into the specifics of the transit items that we've been searching through.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Marty, we can hear you. We are on the Valley Metro assumptions slide. We are having an internet connection problem here in our boardroom that's causing a delay for the slides to show on the screen. So we are on Valley Metro assumptions.
Thank you. Yes.
Marty, do you have the file that you can load up on your computer, maybe screen share from your computer?
Yes, I can. I will do that right now.
Yeah, Pat, make sure that Marty can screen share.
All right.
I think, Pat, you'll have to exit.
Yes, it is not currently letting me override.
I've already stopped sharing, so it's just a delay across the, looks like across the network.
Of WebEx.
All right, I think we have it. All right, well, I hope that everyone's able to see this. Vice Chair Heredia and members of the board, my name is Marty Zeke. I am a planner in the Capital Development Division at Valley Metro. I'm going to start out talking about the different assumptions and then potential mitigation ideas that Valley Metro has come up with to share with you today, and that we will potentially be moving forward and having further discussions with our member cities about. And then after that, I will pass it over to Abby Cooksey Williams, our manager of TDM, and then to Mariah Obedient, our manager of marketing, to give some more different ideas and potential mitigation strategies beyond just kind of what we would assume as the base core of Valley Metro services. So to start out, just to state, as has been stated both by Scott and Kristen, our existing local and commuter transit routes will undoubtedly be impacted by this construction. We are looking to provide alternate travel options that will help alleviate both the impacts on current transit riders as well as impacts that construction will have, namely congestion for the entire region. We're looking at both transit as assumed, bus, rail, paratransit are more usual modes, as well as what we're calling transportation demand management, TDM, that's known locally as commute solutions, to really look at a comprehensive suite that could add into the larger suite of mitigation measures that MAG and ADOT will be pushing forward. And again, as Scott had mentioned, any potential mitigation measures implemented by MAG and ADOT will not be funded through any services that are currently existing, through any local budgets. It would all be identified through project resources or resources outside of the project that are new. So discussing potential mitigation strategies and how they would be funded, again, MAG and ADOT are the leads on this team. Valley Metro is working with MAG as a partner and a stakeholder, but the final decision really does get made at that level of the MAG Regional Council and then ADOT. In terms of what Valley Metro will and will not do, we certainly want to help. We want to be a great partner in this process, but we will not undertake any mitigation measures unless they are funded through new resources. So again, none of these would be made through any local contributions or existing transit operations. Our goal and our foot in the sand is to keep everything that we're doing currently as it is, and anything Broadway curve related would be separate. So just to show, before we get into what some of the strategies that we're looking into are, just to show essentially a picture of what's going on in the region around the Broadway Curve project. I'm not going to go into everything, but just to give a couple overlying points on this. The light purple kind of blob, I guess you could call it, that is the Broadway curve area. And so it's essentially an over 10-mile length section of the I-10, as well as going on to the 60 and the 143 of areas that heavy construction will be taking place. All of the lines that you can see in the myriad different colors on this map are different services that Valley Metro and the City of Phoenix operate that are fixed route that potentially would be impacted by this construction, either through potential increased congestion or just increased travel times. And so because of that, we want to be cognizant as we're looking into all of the different pieces to ensure that we're providing a reliable transit experience during construction, both for our commuters that are traveling during the peak, as well as for those customers that are riding our services on the nights and the weekends. And one thing that we do acknowledge is that although ADOT really does a great job to divert traffic when it's working on one section of the highway onto other parts of ADOT's right-of-way, there are those drivers who decide to self-divert onto the arterials. And so certainly the arterial roads around this project area will see some increased congestion, and that in turn could impact our bus routes. And I think I might be frozen, so I apologize for that. All right, we're good. So moving on to essentially everything that we're looking to do, we are really looking to leverage everything that Valley Metro can bring to the plate into the region to help on this project. That's our rail system, all of our bus routes of different types, as well as our TDM, so vanpool, carpool, and all different types of solutions that Abby Cooksey-Williams will talk through in a minute, as well as everything that we're doing in terms of our messaging and marketing that Mariah Bedient will touch on. And that does include strong regional coordination. So to get into a few of the aspects that we've identified as potential mitigation measures, the first thing we wanted to look into is, could our rail system help with this? And we ran some models showing that by just increasing congestion on the Broadway curve, we would see about a 5% jump in people choosing to take the rail system, everything else made equal. So that does show that there is a pretty strong trend towards people likely choosing to take the train instead of traversing the Broadway curve corridor. The point of this slide is essentially to show that we have quite a few park and ride facilities in the East Valley on our rail system, and that the vast majority of them have capacity available. And mind you, these numbers are pre-COVID, so now the numbers are even frankly a little bit better in terms of the available capacity that we have at these park and rides in order to just take on that additional demand onto the rail system. Another thing we're looking into is utilizing some of the new vehicles that are getting delivered. These are the Siemens vehicles that are used as our system expansion. Essentially, the period of time that the Broadway Curve project would be taking place is very similar to the period of time that the South Central and Northwest Extension 2 construction efforts will be taking place. And so in that interim, we'll have these extra vehicles that are meant to serve on our system expansion, but can help to bolster the existing system during the Broadway Curve project. So a couple suggestions that we've put up as ideas that can be brought forward. The first would be to run 3-car trains. And essentially this would not add much cost other than just a little bit of extra maintenance on vehicles. And it could add capacity for almost 3,000 riders on a daily basis. The other option that we looked into was returning back to the 10-minute service that the system first opened with in order to provide just more trains going down the tracks to alleviate any new riders. And that would increase our operating costs, but the benefit for it in comparison to just running 3-car trains is that we could essentially triple the number of riders that we would be able to add onto the system if we're seeing some crush loads coming into the future. And finally, the other piece on our rail system that we looked into was just potentially trying to figure out which intersections often cause delays to the train and working with our member cities to address that and potentially give the train a little bit more leeway to quickly move through the system. And so we identified 5 intersections in the East Valley that would boost travel time between downtown Phoenix and downtown Mesa by about 4 minutes. That doesn't sound like a lot, but in terms of the perception from the rider, that really could demonstrate that the system is moving faster. And when we modeled it, we saw an additional 3% ridership growth on top of the 5% ridership growth that we saw just from introducing the Broadway Curve congestion into our model. Moving on to the bus network, We did a similar type analysis as with the rail park and rides to see just what types of capacity we had if we were to bolster service on any express routes to help alleviate some of the congestion on this highway. And what we found is that the majority of the East Valley park and rides that are served by buses that use the Broadway curve do have excess capacity if we do expand services. The two that we identified where there would need to be some further mitigation are in Chandler and the Superstition Springs Park and Ride in Mesa. When we met with Chandler staff did tell us that there is a large parking lot in the park adjacent to that facility. So that would be a great way to partner with another city agency to potentially expand that parking lot and allow for more riders. And with Superstition Springs and Mesa staff actually suggested a great idea that we're currently modeling, which is to potentially divert some riders away from using that bus and to use another express route that does not get stuck on the Broadway curve. And I will discuss that on this next slide. So what you're seeing here is some of the modeling that we've done on our express and rapid routes to see if we could bolster ridership during this construction project by essentially running more buses. And we are still in the middle of completing all of that modeling. And at that point, we will present it to the member cities and MAG. But essentially, a few of the large takeaways, the routes identified in darker colors, so the purple running along the US 60, which is the Route 533, as well as the 531 into Gilbert, the 542 into Chandler, and the I-10 East into Ahwatukee. Those are 4 routes that we've identified as potentially having strong benefits from increasing levels of service. And then to nod to what Mesa had said prior as we met with them, the light green dotted line at the top of the map, that's the Route 535. Essentially what we look to do is work with our marketing team to market to passengers that there are alternate routes available, and we could just take people out of that corridor by encouraging them to drive to a different park and ride. And at this point, I would like to hand it over to Abby Cooksey-Williams, our Manager of Commute Solutions.
Thank you, Marty. For TDM, there are a few ways that we might be able to assist in this endeavor. For employers, Commute Solutions can offer customized travel reduction program, or TRP, assistance by location. We already have transportation coordinators in place at the larger businesses and industry along the corridor. So basically, we already have boots on the ground, so to speak. We would be able to look at each company holistically and ascertain what components of TRP would suit them. We can create specific kits and support for the transportation coordinators in the corridor. Those would include digital and print marketing materials and outreach to promote the mitigation programs such as telework and the transit message. We would also like to establish a TMA, which is a Transportation Management Association, for employers in the corridor. It would feature meetings, communications, education for the employers and for the TCs. It would also facilitate cooperation and collaboration among the employers. It would also help to inform employees by hosting town halls and other outreach opportunities. We can also set up sub-sites or networks for the curve employers by utilizing our new TDM Share the Ride platform. For individuals, we can help employees and the general public commuter find carpools and appropriate transit routes. We can assist with forming van pools or finding existing ones, and more about that in just a moment. I spoke earlier about the new platform we have launched. Our vendor, Ride Amigos, has experience with a project in Denver and assures us that we can build some customized modules and functionality that will even incentivize the corridor. This means that there will be contests and incentives specifically targeted and only available to those who live or work in the corridor. We're extremely fortunate that the new system is in place, and again, we are set up and ready to go. Next slide. Maybe. On the subject of van pools, our van pool program currently has room for expansion. The fleet is ready for new starts and it has ample room for growth. For targeted van pool outreach and promotion, we can offer an incentive to include a first month lease free for all new van pool groups who commute along the Broadway curve. Just a side note, that similar construction project that I mentioned earlier that took place in Denver, it resulted in 430 commuters joining van pools. We can also offer special corporate or TMA van pool webinars, and when the time is right and everyone is comfortable, on-site lunch and learns, tabling events, and more. Now I'll hand it over to Mariah for the messaging and marketing information.
Thank you, Abby. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes, all right. From a communications and marketing standpoint, our goal is to coordinate with ADOT and MAG in their communication and outreach plans. We are here to partner with everyone to share messages by utilizing our built-in communication tools that we have at Valley Metro and provide strategy when and where it's needed. We also plan to amplify the value of transit by leveraging existing Valley Metro campaigns to tell the story and share the message of using alternate modes during this construction project. And finally, we plan to educate on a multimodal transportation network and its value to individuals and the region. Marty, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you, Mariah. So in conclusion, essentially just a few points to raise, and then we will certainly open it up for any questions. To start out, as an agency, we are investigating how to leverage this entire region's multimodal network to contribute to the overall project success. As you saw, we've looked at different potential ideas from across the breadth of what Valley Metro does and contributes to the region, and we are always open for new ideas as well. Our two goals, again, are to contribute to the overall project success, as well as to minimize the impact to our existing transit operations. In terms of what will happen as things move forward, MAG and ADOT are leads on this project, and Valley Metro is working really with MAG as a stakeholder. Final decisions, including all of those related to funding, would be made at the level of MAG and ADOT, and Valley Metro certainly will be an active contributor into those conversations. In terms of what Valley Metro will do, again, we will not undertake mitigation measures unless those are funded through new resources. We are solid on that resources will not be diverted from existing transit operations to fund any potential mitigation strategies. And in terms of our next steps in moving forward, we really see this as an iterative process. We seek to incorporate comments from city meetings, from this meeting, from everyone that is able to contribute to this effort, and we look to move forward and really produce something that the region can see as a great model to move forward with in the future as ways to mitigate construction impacts. So as our next step, we are really seeking continued feedback, and I would like to start that right now for opening up to any questions. So thank you.
Yeah, this is Jack. And just a quick comment so people can understand why this is going to be such a disruptive project. Every bridge in that 10-mile section will be replaced. So think about that. In that entire section of the Broadway curve, every bridge will be replaced.
This is Vice Mayor Pat Dennis. I just, I guess not a question, but just a concern of making sure we're getting ahead of it based on what the planning is and when each of the phases move forward for the project, that the options to the citizens that are in the area that or pass through the area have those options way in advance, that they know, in order to kind of mitigate the kind of the congestion that this is going to cause.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, this is Bill.
Go ahead, Bill.
But I just saw Mayor Gallego raise her hand, so and since she's
I did not see the mayor.
So I've got a real simplistic kind of looking at the map question. The number of express buses that all run to downtown from the East Valley obviously will be impacted by this construction project. But I noticed that the light rail seems to be north of the major construction line. Have I got that geographically correct as well? And I'm looking at Marty. Yes, okay. So why, is there a reason why you wouldn't take all of the express buses and express them to the light rail? If you can add additional capacity up to 9,000 riders, why we wouldn't just express bus to the light rail and let the light rail then carry the major load through, and that keeps everybody off of that construction project? Had that been looked at, and is there a pro and con to that?
Thank you for that question. Vice Chair Heredia and members of the board, I can tell you that that is not something that we have looked at yet, but I'm writing it down right now as something that we will investigate. That certainly is a way that we could potentially mitigate some of what that congestion would be. I think the one thing that comes into my mind right now is potentially just where and which station those buses would be routed to. So certainly that is something that we will look into and we will report back.
No worries. I'm usually good for one good idea a month, and I think that was it. So thanks.
All right. Mayor Gallego?
Vice Mayor, you're good for many good ideas a month, so we want you to keep going. One thing that I do think is important to mention is that you saw this time period will be the time period when we are also asking voters to renew or to extend Prop 400, and so we will be having what will be our largest construction project on transportation during a time when we are also asking voters to give us more money to even just to continue key Valley Metro operations. Not ideal in my world, but that is the future we have in front of us. Another thing that I was hoping you could mention a little bit more, because our bus and rail systems are so interlinked, the construction for downtown hub, and that we will be single tracking during some of the time periods that this is happening. And I should also mention from a Phoenix side, the airport is doing significant construction also at the same time period, and the airport construction or the airport schedule is a little bit different than the freeway schedule. The busiest times at the airport include Sunday travel during a time when the freeway, we're incentivizing weekend closures, but for the airport, Sunday is a peak day. So there's going to be a lot of tough times for our traveling public during this, and I'm glad Valley Metro is planning ahead. So I guess question number one, if you would just briefly mention how rail traffic and construction will impact this. And then question number two, have we looked at how other transit agencies have worked with freeway construction projects, and do any of the freeway agencies in other communities incentivize any type of cooperation with transit agencies for the highway contractor?
Thank you, Mayor Gallego. Vice Chair Heredia, members of the board, I can take on that first question, and Kristen, I'm hoping you can take on the second question from the MAG perspective. In terms of all of the different impacts, yes, we did study that. We looked at all of the different potential closures that will be happening in downtown Phoenix that could impact the rail system, as well as the different impacts from events that are taking place in the Broadway curve area, such as spring training games in the future at Diablo Field right there. And of course, ASU graduation and holiday shopping at Arizona Mills. And so all of these different pieces that really could add quite a bit more kind of not usual congestion onto the project. And what we have gotten from MAG is that the contractors are very well aware of all of the different events that will be taking place along the corridor. And so certainly a full weekend closure of any part of that corridor would not take place during any of that. In terms of what's happening with downtown hub in Phoenix, that certainly could impact our rail operations. And at this point, we know that that project needs to go forward. So our idea and our goal is to essentially just ensure that we are providing the best communication possible and constantly monitoring what our ridership is to ensure that the level of service that we're putting out is working well for the riders that we're seeing on the system.
And if I could, Mayor, this is Scott. One of the things is we're trying to accelerate construction through the downtown area because of the Super Bowl. And so we believe that the greatest impact of rail construction right now, if things go well, would happen before the greatest impact on the Broadway curve. There will be some overlap, but we're hoping that we can get the basic construction done, and we won't have to single track through downtown before the real deep impact of the Broadway curve hits.
Wonderful, thank you.
And thank you, Mayor Gallego, Mr. Vice Chairman, and members of the board. I'm going to try to answer your second question. I think I have it in my brain on what you had asked for, but when we looked at those, we didn't find many projects that had really integrated transit mitigation throughout the United States. But the three that we really did look at that were similar to the Broadway curve, we had one out in Los Angeles, another in Denver, the T-Rex project, and then one out in the East Coast. They did incentivize specifically to transportation demand strategies like van pool, ride sharing, little offsetting of fare for those. But what we did find the most was you need to be flexible. As we know with the Broadway curve, we don't know what the developers are going to bring forward for kind of phasing and when they're doing certain things, maybe at 143 around the curve. So we're going to need to be flexible in our messaging, our communication, what we have there, because there's going to be different needs throughout this 4 years, and that's what we did find from our peer review.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Any other comments, questions?
Councilmember Heredia, this is Robin. I just got one real quick.
Yes. Go ahead.
Marty, this is for you, and I just want to make sure, I think there was some really good points brought up, and I think the mayor brought up a good one in regards to timing. I think we need to be really careful and cognizant of what's going on during that time and the impact that's going to have. And you also mentioned about the importance of communication and coordination and making sure that we're all on the same page. And this does have a significant impact with Phoenix and the East Valley cities. And I just want to make sure, I think Vice Mayor Stitt mentioned it too, that we're really thoroughly vetting this application, or what you might call it, beforehand. Will there be an opportunity for Phoenix and the East Valley cities to get together one more time before the final submittal?
Certainly, yes. Thank you for that question. We are actually currently working on getting that sent out. And honestly, right as this meeting ends, I will be reaching out to those city staff members individually and asking for who would like to be in attendance into those meetings, and so we can get that on the calendar. Our goal is to have the most collaborative process that we can to ensure that we are addressing everyone's needs. And then once we have some proposals worked out, we are currently working in tandem with MAG. And so essentially that will just kind of fluidly move over into their larger process as they work with their contractor and ADOT to finalize any potential mitigations.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I would just add, as a member in one of the East Valley cities, Mesa, just a communication with the cities and making sure that we have a good game plan as far as to give options to our residents. This is also, I think, maybe an opportunity to introduce to new riders that haven't been using light rail or bus so far, and so it could be an opportunity to introduce them. But we have to have a good game plan to ensure that they have a good experience on public transportation here in the Valley. So that's what I would say on that. Okay. If no other questions or comments, no action is required in this. This was for information only, but I'm sure we'll be hearing from the team more often on this this issue. So thank you, Marty and staff. Why don't we move on to next item? Item number 8, travel expenditure solicitations. Again, this item is presented for information only. If there's any questions or comments, we'll take them now. Hearing none, we'll move on to future agenda items, requests, and report on current events. I'll ask any of the members if they have any agenda items they want in the future meetings or anything they would like to inform the board about. All right, hearing none. Item number 10, next meeting of the board is scheduled for Thursday, October 22nd, 2020 at 11:15. So we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and we'll move on to the next meeting. Let me just pull it up here. All right. I'm assuming everybody's ready for this one. Or do we take a moment, Pat?
No, we can just keep moving forward.
Keep going. All right. So we'll convene next meeting. Welcome again. September meeting of Valley RPTA. Item number 1 on the agenda, public comment for today's meeting. Public comment is being taken in written format, will be entered in the official minutes of the meeting. Item number 2, the minutes from August 27, 2020 board meeting are as presented for approval. Want to ask a request for motion and a second to approve the board minutes.
Bernhard Key, so move.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor,
Second. All right,
Mayor,
perfect.
second.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Item number 3, the consent agenda. I'll pass it over to Scott Smith.
Mr. Chair, if there's any items that anyone would like explanation on or remove from the consent agenda, I'm more than happy to do that. We have no presentations scheduled for this, but we're happy to answer any questions on any of the items.
Hey, Councilman.
Yeah, go ahead.
For Scott, and I guess it's on 3C, Scott. I guess my concern is I know we're really worried about budget concerns moving forward, and I'm wondering, I know it's $50,000 may not break the bank, but is there an opportunity for us to maybe do like this in-house, or maybe do some training in-house or something like that to do this in-house?
Actually, the reason why, and thank you very much for the question, council member. Perhaps Ray or Wolf might, but I'll give a stab at this. The reason for this is basically a service from an employee and a contractor that had retired. And so to answer your question quickly, no, we do not have the resources in-house and the expertise. Handling this type of scheduling requires a very, very specific knowledge on our scheduling software that we work in conjunction with the city of Phoenix on. And this expertise doesn't exist, which is why we're extending these services to try and retain that level of expertise, especially as we're juggling schedules around and services around due to COVID and other things. That's the main purpose for this to be on here.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Arredondo Savage, this is Wolf Groth. Just to add to what Scott was saying, the expertise that we're bringing in is very specialized. We are actually in the process. We've been for several months trying to hire somebody just to fill one of our positions, and we've been unsuccessful at finding the skill set that we need. And also, the person that is doing the work here for us under this contract is somebody who recently retired from the city of Phoenix, who was the key the key scheduler, knew the HASTIS program that we're using very well, and so he can jump in quickly and do these things that, especially on an emergency basis, that we need to have done. So unfortunately, we don't have the ability in-house that we would like to have, and we're still working on it.
Thank you, Councilmember Heredia.
All right. Any other questions on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll request a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Councilmember Arredondo Savage.
Second?
Second, Councilmember Tomachoff.
Perfect. Anyone opposed the consent agenda? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Why don't we move on to item number 4, Northwest Phase 2 Light Rail Extension updated funding. Oh, I'm in the wrong agenda here. Sorry about that. I'm like, apologize. Scott here. There we go. All right, number 4, authorization to issue a joint agency competitive solicitation for fair inspection and security services. Now, Scott, you can take it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is on your agenda, even though about 95% of the expenditure under this contract will be on the rail side. It's for all the fair inspection and all that. However, the same company that provides those services also provides security services for our Mesa bus facility. Under their guidelines of RPTA, anytime we issue an RFP, we must come to the board for permission to issue that RFP. And that's why you have this before you, because of the portion of that contract that will be committed to RPTA expenditure and be paid for by RPTA. So this is just to issue the RFP, not to approve any RFP. So that's what we're asking for.
Okay. Any of the board members have any questions? Don't see anyone. All right. Request a motion and a second to authorize the CEO to develop a scope of work and issue a competitive solicitation for a total contract term of 5 years to provide fair inspection and security services for Valley Metro's existing rail operations and maintenance facilities.
So moved. Councilmember Tomachoff.
Second, Vice Chair Pat Dennis.
All right. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. Item number 5, authorization to develop and issue a request for proposal for operation of regional paratransit, including East Valley and Northwest Valley services. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is similar to the first one as far as needing approval of the board to begin work on an RFP, but I'm going to turn it over to Jim Hilliard and perhaps Patty. I don't know if Patty's going to be part of this also, to give a brief explanation, because this is a subject that has raised, there were a lot of questions at both the staff and the manager level, and I just want to make sure that there's no uncertainty as to what we're beginning here, since paratransit is such a critical service that we provide. So Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Scott. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members. So as Scott notes, we issued the original paratransit contract to Transdev in 2017. That contract's first term concludes June 30th, 2022. The contract allows us to exercise 2 extensions, first for a 3-year, then a 2-year extension at Valley Metro's discretion. So we needed to make a decision as to whether we wanted to extend the existing contract or to resolicit. To make that decision, we worked for the last several months with both the paratransit and transit staff from each of your cities, conducted several discussions. We also engaged Accenture Consulting to do some benchmarking, comparing our cost and performance to other like cities across the country. The consensus from those discussions was that we should use this opportunity to resolicit the contract. The major change since 2017 has been the creation and now success of the Ride Choice program, which provides paratransit-like services with more flexibility for the riders and at a lower cost to us as a region. And so we really thought this was a perfect opportunity to integrate paratransit and Ride Choice for the first time. Specifically, what we're talking about is because Ride Choice and paratransit were created as 2 separate programs on separate timelines, they each included their own scheduling and customer service functions. So when a rider calls paratransit and says, I'd like to go from point A to point B, the paratransit customer service agent never ever says, you know, it sounds to me like your needs could be met at a lower cost to you and the region by Ride Choice. Would you be willing to consider that? That's simply not in Transdev's best interest. And so So not only are we missing an opportunity to connect riders with the service that would meet their needs at the lowest cost for both the rider and the region, but we're also paying for two different scheduling functions, two different customer service functions, et cetera. And so we believe this is a perfect opportunity to bring those functions together, and we believe also identify other potential duplicate administrative functions that can be eliminated to reduce the aggregate cost of the paratransit and ride choice programs together. So on page 2 of the memo, you'll see the schedule for this procurement, and I'll just call out a couple of key steps. First, you'll note that the development of the RFP is scheduled for a full 11 months. That's significantly longer than we typically set aside for developing an RFP, and that's because we want to make sure that we can have maximum involvement from all the impacted cities in the development of this RFP. There'll be 3 different ways for cities to be involved. The first is we're conducting focus groups that involve the paratransit and, should they choose to be involved, transit staff or RTAG members from every single city. We had our first meeting on September 8. We have a second meeting scheduled on the 23rd, and we'll be continuing to have those 2 to 3 a month for the next several months. The purpose of the focus group is to allow us to talk through all of the options and to come to consensus as a region about what the structure of this new paratransit and ride choice contract should be. And I say paratransit and ride choice, we would be soliciting specifically for paratransit operations, but once again, the scheduling and customer support for paratransit and ride choice combined. So these focus groups allow us to involve everyone and to have very broad input without having to have everyone sign non-disclosure agreements that would be required once we get into the more detailed scope of work. So at the conclusion of those focus group sessions, we'll be coming back to TMC, RMC, and sharing with them the high-level structure that we've come to as a region for the combination of these services and paratransit going forward. That'll give TMC, RMC an opportunity to give us any feedback from their perspective. Next, we'll have a team that drafts the scope of work. Once again, we've asked cities to participate in that, and we're hoping that we'll have several that can help us take the higher level work of the focus group and translate it into the specific scope of work and terms and conditions for the contract. And then lastly, we're also asking cities to participate as members of the evaluation committee who will evaluate the bids that we receive on the contract. We'll then come back to the board in January of 2022 and seek your approval to award the new contract. And then you'll note there's a 9-month transition period. So if we have a change of vendors, we have the opportunity to make that change in a way that will be seamless for riders. You'll also note that while the first 5-year term for the TransDev contract ends on June 30th, our cutover to the new contractor is being delayed until October 1st. So we'll do a 3-month extension to TransDev's contract so that cutover doesn't happen in the midst of summer. So we're going to aim for a seamless transition, but should there be any hiccups, and there were last time, we want to make sure that that's not happening when folks are being impacted, by the heat. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Hey, Jim, if I could add one thing. Excuse me, getting some kind of alert. If I could add one thing, thank you very much for talking about ride choice, because that's the primary area of interest. It's a huge transition for this region, and those who use use paratransit services for local. But we have 4 different providers of dial-a-ride or paratransit in the valley on local area. We have 1 provider for a regional. And this contract, as Jim said, with TransDev happened in 2017, about the same time we started offering regional services. We've learned a lot over the last 3 years about the regional service. Thank you to you and your staff. We have a lot. We've consolidated rules. We've really tried to get our one fare, one call, one rule program in place where we can eliminate the myriad of different paratransit rules by city, which have been really exposed as challenging with the regional services and have created some, as we've told you in the past, some absurd situations where we could take people one way and not the other way. Well, we've learned where those gaps are. We've closed a lot of those gaps. So we're much better prepared as we work to define how we provide these services to integrate both the regional services, the local services, and the ride choice into as seamless of a system as we possibly can. So that's the other reason to take some time, is to learn, to take what we've learned, to present it to the cities, do these focus group and brainstorming to come up with a system that we believe will better serve us in the years to come.
Rolling winter city surprise. I agree with Jim, with you and your group's idea. I think it'd be a great idea. The big problem with TransDev, hearing from my constituents and my own experience, is that they really have a long period where they say they're on time, up to 45 minutes. So 45 minutes either way really is kind of ridiculous. The ride choice program, you can give them a time that you like to be picked up, and usually they're pretty much on time. I think most of my constituents know how long it takes to get to where they have to go. They don't have to rely on TransDev to say, give them an appointment time, and TransDev tells what time they're going to be there. And you, like I said, usually about 45 minutes, which to me, I think is pretty ridiculous. So thanks for that. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Jim, this is Bill Stipp.
Go ahead.
Jim, is there any crossover or any linkage with the Dial-A-Ride program that this is going to look at, either scale back or how is that going to be affected by the look at this contract? So I would imagine this will be the first of the rest of the regional programs.
Yeah, so interestingly, Phoenix is in the process of rebidding its Dial-A-Ride program on a pretty similar time frame. It's my understanding that their RFP is scheduled to come out a bit sooner and to be awarded in a slightly different time frame, but they'll be going through a procurement in parallel with us. And so we're specifically asking that Phoenix and Glendale, as two of the major other paratransit service providers in the region, participate in our scope of work development so that we can sort of sync up across providers as much as possible. I think one of the interesting possibilities that this RFP could create, as Scott mentioned, is working on the one call aspect of the one rule, one call, one fare vision. Because right now, Phoenix and Glendale also have their own customer service and their own scheduling functions for their paratransit functions. And so I think we'll deliberately write the customer service and scheduling aspects of this RFP so that if any municipality would like to use it, both for economies of scale and for ease of choice for the customer, they can sort of opt into that over time. So I think we're going to try to coordinate in the creation of the new contract and to build in some flexibility so that should cities be interested in greater convergence, we've got a mechanism to do that.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? I don't think any other questions. I don't hear anybody or don't see anybody raising their hand. All right. Thank you, Jim, for that. I do request a motion and a second to authorize the CEO to develop and issue a federally compliant RFP for a total term of 10 years. To provide paratransit in the East Valley, Northwest Valley, and for regional trips, and to extend TransDev's current contract 120 days so that any transitions between contractor occurs October 1st rather than July 1st, 2022. So request a motion and a second.
So move this bill.
I'll make a second. This is Vice Mayor Pat Dennis.
All right. Thank you. Anyone opposed to this? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, staff. Item number 6, future agenda items, request and report on current events. Any members have any agenda items for future meetings, or if anything they would like to inform the staff about. Hearing none. Next meeting is Thursday, October 22nd, 2020 at 11:15. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And we'll take a couple minutes on to or maybe everybody on the Valley Metro Rail Board can stick around. We'll start in maybe 1 or 2 minutes. I think, do we have everybody, Pat? Everybody?
Yes, we're ready to go. Yep, we're ready to go.
All right, why don't we start our rail meeting, convene this meeting, and welcome members to this meeting. Item number 1, public comment for today's meeting. Public comment is being taken in written format and will be entered into the official minutes of the meeting. Item number 2, the minutes from our August 27, 2020 board meeting are presented for approval. Request a motion and a second to approve minutes.
So move.
Second.
Perfect. Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Item number 3, consent agenda. Items are listed on the consent agenda for approval. Any community members would like any of the items removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I request a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Anyone opposed? None, motion passes. Item number 4, Northwest Phase 2 Light Rail Extension, updated funding, design, and construction agreement with the City of Phoenix. This was the one I was stating on the previous meeting, Scott, sorry about that. But I was so excited about this, that's why. So
there you
pass it
go.
over to Scott.
Well, I'll turn it over to Wolf Grode, who can give you a brief explanation as to what this is for. Wolf?
Yes, thank you, Scott. Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This item is to update an agreement that we have with the City of Phoenix for funding, design, and construction for our Northwest Extension Project, Phase 2, that is. More specifically, there's really 2 things that we're trying to do in this change. One is just to amend some of the responsibilities in the design and construction portion of this. And then also it's for Phoenix to provide up to an additional $199 million to Valley Metro. And that's really for 2 purposes. The main purpose is about almost $160 million of that is for funding that we will need on an interim basis while we were waiting for FTA to reimburse us their funds. That usually takes anywhere from 1 to 3 years to see their funds back in our coffers. So once we get those funds, Phoenix would be reimbursed for that. The other remaining about $40 million is for additional construction funds that are primarily needed because of the change in FTA participation in the project. Their percentage share of the project was somewhat reduced in order to be able to move this project forward. And as far as the other changes, most of them are fairly small. The most significant change that we made in terms of responsibilities is that the City of Phoenix will now take on procuring traffic signal materials. Rather than having our contractor do it, they can do it more efficiently and save us some money by doing that. So that's the quick synopsis. Our recommendation is to provide authorization for our CEO to amend the funding, design, and construction agreement for the Northwest Extension Phase 2 project, and for Phoenix to provide up to $199 million additional to Valley Metro. I'd be happy to entertain questions.
Any questions, comments? All right, hearing none, request a motion and a second to authorize the CEO to amend the existing funding, design, and construction agreement with the City of Phoenix for the Northwest Phase 2 Light Rail Extension, and for Phoenix to provide up to an additional $199 million to Valley Metro. This action is pending City of Phoenix Council action as well. So, but request a motion and a second.
So moved, Chair.
Second.
Perfect. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, item number 5, future agenda item, report on current events. Any members have any agenda items for future meetings or anything they want to inform folks about? Item number 6, next meeting. The next meeting is Thursday, October 22nd, 2020 at 11:15 a.m. Thank you, everybody.
Well done, Frankie.
All right. We'll see you. Thanks, everybody.